Let's focus on commodities, coffee specifically. Coffee futures have risen to their highest levels since 2012 and trading in New York today. In fact, at 14:50 GMT, futures are trading at about $227.85, up about 2.7% at that point during the trading session. On a year-to-date basis, that takes the price rise to over 66%. Now, the price rise is partially due to adverse weather in the world's biggest producer of coffee, Brazil. The country's coffee crop has been hit by drought and frost, which has destroyed coffee cherries in some parts of the country. Now, coming here to Africa, Uganda and Ethiopia are the continent's biggest coffee producers. But here in Kenya, we're seeing price hikes of a similar magnitude as well. The volume of coffee sold at auction fell by nearly 30% in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, but prices went up by almost 50% that year. In the first 7 months of 2021, prices per kilogram on average have gone up by 55% in dollar terms. Output is about 2.7% higher than it was compared to the same period a year earlier. So with price hikes of this magnitude, are consumers here in East Africa paying a lot more for their coffee? But just as important, are those price hikes translating into better returns for farmers? I explored those matters with Ritesh Doshi. He's the CEO and owner of Spring Valley Coffee.
In the 70s, the New York price hit at $3 at one point. That's probably $14 today. So we are talking about all-time highs at the moment. 2 seasons ago, when it was hovering around $1, the NC had some of the highest prices in years here in Kenya. And what's a little bit different in Kenya, unlike other markets, is that farmers don't get paid for cherry here. They get paid for their green coffee. So it doesn't translate as much as it might in other markets. Having said that, there is absolute benefit to our farmers. They had very good prices last year, even when New York was lower. They're experiencing 7-year highs. They're not all-time highs, but they're definitely 7-year highs.
Prices essentially moving in the opposite direction to volumes, because volumes essentially between 2019 and 2020 they did fall by around 27-28%, but prices went up, at least in shilling terms, by almost 50% over that period of time. So is this just a case of less supply coming into the market, at least within the Kenyan context, less supply coming in and therefore prices going up, or is there more to it?
I mean, I personally feel that there's actually more to it. Remember, I mean, again, overall return is a combination of prices and volume, right? I mean, regionally, we've experienced poor weather in the last years, not as bad as Brazil or Vietnam, but there's other factors at play here. I mean, Uganda is also experiencing all-time highs. They have Robusta and Arabica. But farmers are definitely benefiting from it. I'll give you an example. There's a shortage of seedlings in the market today. They believe that there's an opportunity with rising prices. You go out to Nyeri, you go out to, the Nandi Hills. Farmers are talking about the frost that happened in Brazil and why that's impacting the price.
That's interesting. Why is there a seedling shortage?
Well, I mean, again, it's like I think anything demand and supply. Today, people are seeing all-time high prices. They're saying, "Hey, let me plant more coffee. Prices are high." Of course, when they see the benefit of that, when that coffee tree is growing 3-5 years out, prices may be different. I have a view that those prices may stay in those ranges for the next 18 to 24 months. But farmers are investing today in the future. We're seeing that in seedlings. We're seeing more young people going back into farming. People that were not so interested in going back to their fathers or their grandfathers or their uncles' estate are going back. There are more young people. In my last trip out to the Nandi Hills in August, I met some really young people taking over family farms.
That's interesting, because the average age of the farmer here tends to be, well north of 50. And we have seen progressively over the years, Kenyan coffee output has just been declining year after year after year. And one of the reasons that farmers used to cite in the past was, look, the yields here just don't make any sense for me. The crop is just not profitable anymore. Are we perhaps at an inflection point where people might say, okay, now coffee is worth it, it's profitable again?
I think they are seeing that. That's perhaps short-term thinking. I mean, think about, what's happened today. I think it's a result of many things. The frost in Brazil, the effect of COVID in Vietnam, political issues in Colombia and Ethiopia. So overall supply is down. So Kenyan coffee is dear. It's at a premium. People appreciate and value it. They're also trying to fill the gaps that have been left in the market. So Kenyan coffee is at an all-time high. Would I always say at these prices? Probably not. Will it stay here for the foreseeable future? I think the first telltale sign will be when we get into the big export season in Jan and Feb to see what happens with prices at the Nairobi Coffee Exchange. My personal view, I think it'll remain high for the next 18 to 24 months, as I said. But the longer term view, people won't see the benefit of their planting today for the next 3 years at the earliest, but in reality, probably 5 years out. So people are reinvesting in their farms. They're reinvesting, be it in agriculture and inputs, in seedlings. And there is a shortage. I mean, personally, I tried to buy 5,000 seedlings recently for a farm that we work closely with to help them plant. I can't get any.
Oh, that's pretty interesting. But what about the consumer side of it? Because when I see price hikes of this magnitude on the supply chains, on the supply side, for critical input, right? Because it's a coffee that we're selling to the consumer. How much of that can you actually pass on to the end client in Kenya vis-a-vis your external markets?
Sure. So we raised our prices back in March when we'd seen kind of a slight increase in prices, and we took we increased our prices about 20% for our retail bags of coffee and about 25% for our beverages. Coffee prices, as you know, have continued to rise, but we are not in a position. Consumers in this market are sensitive, and while we have great quality coffee, is somebody going to buy a $4 cappuccino in Nairobi? I would guess not. So we've had to absorb a significant part of that. The beverage side of our business continues to be fine, but just packaged product that has been roasted, while that value addition is so important, I think there is some price. There's a lot of price sensitivity there. Could we increase prices again this year? Absolutely not. I just don't think the market can absorb it.
Indeed. One last question for you. Looking out over the medium term, you've said you essentially expect prices to remain where they are at the moment for at least the next 18 months, give or take a few. But what about the weather side of things? Because we're seeing all these increasing issues in, say, in Brazil, a key producer for coffee around the world. But what about in our neck of the woods? We're seeing a lot more inclement weather, more frequent droughts, a lot more flooding. Has that affected the yields that you're getting the yields of the coffee that you're getting into your roastery?
Well, I'm going to bring Brazil into this because I think what's been interesting is obviously what's happened with Brazil with the frost and the crop failure. Brazil runs an on and an off cycle. So Brazil every season every 2 years has one big cycle, one big crop, one small crop, one big crop, one small crop. And this year was meant to be a larger crop. And obviously with the crop failure, it means that this year's crop is tiny, next year's will be small, hence accounting for the shortage. What's happening here in Kenya? Drought definitely has an effect. People that were growing higher up can actually grow a little bit higher up because of rising temperatures. What we are seeing, places that are a little bit dry are becoming a little bit drier. Irrigation is becoming challenging. Having said that, we're seeing some changing dynamics. Places that were traditionally tea growing, country, you think about Kericho up in the Nandi Hills, we're seeing a lot more people planting coffee for the first time or really kind of getting great harvests. We're buying some incredible coffees out of South Nyanza, out of Rongo, that traditionally weren't coffee growing parts of the country. So it's having an effect, both positive and negative.